Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of Dr. Yan, and I am your host, Dr. Li-Meng Yan. This week, I have a very special professional guest on the intelligence analysis, especially on the cognitive wall aspect. He is Edward Haugland. Edward is a retired federal senior executive and U.S. Air Force veteran. His over 4 decades of service include service as senior leader in the intelligence community and Departments of Defense, Homeland Security, DOE, and Department of Energy, and also Department of State. He served as a senior advisor to several IC agency heads, the Assistant Inspector General for Inspections for the Intelligence Community, Chairman of CIA's Strategic Planning, a Deputy Team Lead for the INF on-site nuclear arms inspections in the former Soviet Union, and as award-winning CIA intelligence analyst. He is currently an independent consultant focusing on cognitive warfare. He's also a regular host on the National Security Hour, which is another broadcast on the America Out Loud radio network. And we always have wonderful hosts in our radio network. Welcome, Edward. Thank you for coming to my show.
No, very, very pleased to be here, Dr. Yan, and thank you for inviting me on. This is a fantastic topic, and I'm glad you're interested in talking about it, especially given your experiences and background both in Hong Kong and mainland China and the COVID aspect. So looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Edward. Actually, I have learned these things basically from my childhood, but in China, they brainwash everyone. They give this kind of cognitive cognition, this kind of manipulation to every Chinese since they were born. But we usually can't realize that until that something happened. For me, Hong Kong pro-democracy protest in 2019, and also the outbreak of COVID-19 from the end of 2019 is the two very significant event in my life to change my understanding and start to know more about the cognitive warfare and the strategies. So before we start to talk about this, I'm very curious about your intelligence analyst experience. Could you, if available, could you share with our audience that what does it mean to be a award-winning CIA intelligence analyst? I mean, that means you have done a lot to contribute to this whole country and then become the award-winning analyst, right? Could you tell me what you can share with us about your background, your experience in this field? Because this is always a mysterious field for most of audience.
No, fantastic question. So thank you for the question. So my background, I was a United States Air Force officer, and I started in the intelligence community. I graduated from the University of Colorado at Boulder with a degree in Soviet studies. Wow. And so I was mentored and taught by one of the top professionals in that arena, Dr. Edward Haugland. He had went to school with both Dr. Kissinger and also Zbigniew Brzezinski. And he was a foremost expert in this arena. So he provided me a great deal of background information and introductions to a number of people who had led the American Communist Party, but also people who had fought communists throughout the years. And so this whole cognitive aspect started back then. When I left the college, I went into the Air Force. I was assigned over to the Defense Intelligence Agency on rotation to the Central Intelligence Agency, where I did an analysis there. The awards I won there were related to analytics related to Soviet nuclear forces. And the only thing I think I say there is basically I won the report of the year for one of my published reports. But of course, because it's classified, I can't go into details. Nonetheless, that analytic experience, analytic training and background, as well as my background in Soviet studies, has served me now for the last 4 decades as I continue to assess and analyze the situation. To include, yearly I teach at the Army War College on cognitive warfare.
May I know that when you start to study Soviet Union and then later you spend over 4 decades on this topic, now when we say that what is happening in Ukraine and Russia, although we know that Soviet Union is collapsed, but Russia, especially Putin regime, won't even go back to that glory during the Soviet Union, or even to the beginning of the Soviet Union. At that time, Russia, Soviet Union was very strong in the world, and now they even paired with communist China to achieve their dominance in the world. So according to your knowledge, could you tell our audience, is there any significant change since the collapse of the Soviet Union until now, in the past 3 decades, in the cognitive strategy field happened in Russia? And also, what do you think about this kind of influence can now impact to the world? Because we can feel strongly that this time, when Russia launched the invasion against Ukraine, Russia and China, as we know, they have signed the secret deals on joint propaganda, and we can see a lot of misinformation. Support Russia, support China, which means they are strongly against the democracy, against the U.S. Almost everywhere on social media and also on other media. So what do you say from this kind of significant change, and what's the most important thing you want to tell our audience in this change?
No, so I appreciate the question. So from my perspective, I'll go back to the end of the Cold War. So when the Soviet Union collapsed, the day America declared that we won the Cold War, we then lost the Cold War. So what do I mean by that? Mm-hmm. So from a cognitive perspective, we said, great, the Soviet Union has collapsed. All these Soviet satellite countries are now declaring their independence. And so we began to dismantle our capabilities, our capacity, and our means to conduct cognitive warfare. U.S. information agencies and other areas that we use, not to push propaganda, to push the truth. The truth were dismantled. Our means and methods to then understand and make sure we had access to the various networks to pass and provide that truth were dismantled. Now, why is that important? Because the Soviet Union, as we all knew back then, as Russia exists now, as Ukraine exists now, were black market economies, and they're still black market economies. So once we declared the Cold War victory, we walked away and shut down our capacity and capability in the cognitive aspect to help influence and inform people. We deferred and left a vacuum to those who then drove the black market economies. Now, where does Vladimir Putin come from? Well, he comes from the KGB. Okay, he was born and raised in that realm of deceit, deception, and subversion. But he's also very smart, as he understood that the Soviet power and now the Russian power was to be maintained based on maintaining that black market economy. And so he's worked with the oligarchs and over time gained acquiescence. And now the chief leader of Russia now for several years, right?
Yes.
And he continues to push that black market economy. The problem with that is, while he's doing that, the Russian people have been leaving in droves, especially the folks who are more educated and smart. The high-tech folks and stuff have been leaving in droves ever since the wall fell. Why? Because they didn't like the oppression. They don't like the oppression now. And they realize that they're still being lied to for the most part. So Russia with China, both were formed from the same set of deceptive practices. So a lot of people think, it's communism and such like that. Well, the way I look at cognitive warfare is that there are ways and means to an end. A good strategy lays out the ways and means to an end. The ways that the Soviets or the communist Chinese use are ideology. So in this case, communism. In past cases, it's fascism. In other cases, it's autocracy and other things. The ways also include the use of religion. You see along jihads. You also see religion used back in old Christianity days and the Spanish Inquisition and other things. And it includes issues. Okay, so whether, like for example, during the Red Scare, when Jimmy Carter deployed ground-launched cruise missiles into Western Europe, they used different issues as, nuclear war and stuff like that. In the United States, you could say abortion and other things are issues that they have. So those are the ways. The means they use cover a variety of different facets, from economic, political, social, military, and others. And this is where our intelligence community and our Department of Defense, in my opinion, are living still in the industrial age with industrial age policies and cultures, and still haven't pulled the proverbial heads out of their rear ends to figure out that we're in a cognitive war, not only with Russia, but with China. It's been persistent, and it will remain persistent. So now Russia and Putin also then saw that NATO was fairly weakened. Even though when President Trump came in, he tried to strengthen NATO and get them to pay their bill. Putin knew that NATO was weakened. Putin knew that NATO was not a threat. But he used the auspices of that to do the invasion initially in 2014. And when he did that under President Obama and Vice President Biden, he saw there was very little penalty to pay for that, very little reaction.